Well, here's a story of me and Joe about losing our lives. Take advantage of the Trinity flooding. Going to hit a couple high spots on my dad's place where all the animals are pushed up. Everything's going great. Gets dark. Get to the canoe. Canoe. Got that small Tohatsu motor on there. We get in it. Joe pushes off. I crank the motor up. Everything's going good. We get the whole canoe out in the water. Let me back that up.
Well, before we got the canoe out, I'm talking about how much of a badass I am, and to sum it up, and he tells me, you know, go ahead and put your life jacket on, Joe. It could get hairy coming out in this current, and he's putting his life jacket on. I'm like, nah, I'm good. We'll be all right. So I opt against that option, and we get in the canoe, and we get the whole canoe. We get the motor started, we get out of the small creek, and the whole canoe's into the main current of the river, and the prop hangs a log under the water at the mouth of the creek coming out the river. I'll let JP take over from there, and it's none of it.
So I'm controlling the little outboard. You got your handle. The motor jumps up on the log. Joe's yelling at me, shut it off. And I said, man, I got it. Well, I lift the motor up, and man, it's the prop spinning, and the current's moving the front end of the boat around. It's kind of pushing us to the left. Well, it hits back down. Everything's good. We hit one more log, and as we hit that second log, the canoe's already over onto, we're out in the river, and it's pushed against kind of a little log jam kind of thing. And I couldn't get it kind of undone. He's like, shut it off. I said, okay, man, I'm trying. So I'm trying to shut it off. Well, when I do, I pick it up at the same time trying to shut it off, and when it slammed back down and got back over that second log underneath the water, the motor was turned, and it was turned the wrong direction. So not only did the river push us down, but the motor was cocked over, and in an instant, we done flipped this thing.
It was in a blink of an eye, it turned over. And as soon as it flipped over, it was instantly the suction. It was everything I could do to stay above the water, and I you know, my first thought was save my life. You know, I was doing everything I could to stay above water and make it to the log jam. I was doing the first thing sturdy to grab a hold of something. And John Paul, the first thing he did was get the canoe settled, flipped upside down so it didn't turn sideways and sink all the way, and he stayed with it and held up against the log jam and held the canoe
while the motor's still running.
While the motor's still running in the back, you know, and that his first reaction to that is what is the reason we're being able to tell the story, because I was completely useless at that point. I didn't have a life jacket on. It was everything I could do to stay afloat.
The current done sucked your pants smooth off.
When I got up onto the log jam, I couldn't get my foot up on the log jam because my pants were sucked off inside out, hanging on my ankles. Is how bad it was pulling me down, and I couldn't get my feet up on the log jam. I couldn't figure out why. It's because my pants were hanging up on the logs and the branches trying to get up on it, and I couldn't get my feet up. So once he was hanging on the side of the log with his feet wrapped around the canoe and holding a paddle, the log, a paddle, and the canoe up against the log jam. And only thing I could do is once I got up on top of the log jam and got some footing, you know, I just kept asking him. You know, I was a little shook up. I was like, hey man, you okay? You okay? You okay? And he was fine. He was totally cool.
So at this point, I already knew. I said, okay, I got the canoe settled. I got my arm around here. I said, okay, Joe's okay. He's asking me if I'm okay. That means I know he's okay. I reach in my pocket, pull my brand new iPhone 6S out. It's in 2 plastic baggies, which I asked Joe right before we left. I said, hey, get us a couple sandwich bags in case we get a little wet. Our phones will be okay. Come in handy.
Score. Thank you, Jesus.
I put it up on the log I'm actually holding on to. Current's still rushing by me. I got the canoe in one hand and I got it wrapped around my legs, the motor wrapped around my legs, and I got my other arm around a big log. I'm just holding on. I said, he goes, you okay? You okay? Yeah, I'm okay. Just come help me. So he comes on over and he's doing like old logger stance. He's walking down a log, this log jam, and he's doing this number, and he comes down to me. and the canoe's totally upside down, and you could tell there's some water in it, or air in it, because it's kind of sitting up a little bit. So I said, all right, we need to flip it over, and that way we can pull it up on top of this log jam. Well, when we flipped it over, there was a life jacket and that a double paddle that we had in there. Well, as soon as that life jacket popped up, he grabs it, and guess what?
And Matthew's AR, his 300 Blackout, that was not tied to anything, that I put under one of the plank canoe seats on top of a life jacket. It got tangled up in the life jacket, and it floated up in the top of the canoe. So as soon as we flipped it over, I started pulling the life jacket out because we needed that. We needed the paddle, and the gun is tangled up in the life jacket. So, I mean, by just luck of the draw, that gun come out with it. We were super relieved about that. We got everything essential out that we could. The small cooler that we had our drinks in popped up and started going down the river. And he immediately told me while he was still in distress, you know, I mean we're still in a bind at this point, you know, and he's like, hey, grab the paddle, get the cooler, save the tees. And I made one feeble attempt, and they went on, and I gave up pretty.
The cooler.
I did hit the cooler with a paddle, but I gave up pretty quickly after that.
Right.
I was like, you know what, we're gonna have to let that tee go. I mean, there was only one in the cooler, but we let that ride, and then as soon as we got everything that was essential, you know, he looked at me and said, Joe, put a damn life jacket on. So I did that next, put a life jacket on, and then we started working on a way to try to get the canoe flipped over completely and get it to where we could get the water out of it.
So we end up flipping it over, but there was just so much water in it, and all the current was still kind of pulling it real heavy, and we're both having to hold on to it. And
we're not in very good. It's not like we're standing on the bank. You know, we're balancing on logs in the current.
Mm-hmm. So we get it up, and we get enough of it up on this log. Well, the log breaks away, and the canoe flips one more time. Doesn't flip, but turns sideways enough when we think we're going to lose it. And what it ended up happening perfectly, where it tipped the canoe enough where it dumped half the water out of it, and we grabbed it.
And we both had our hands on it at the same time.
Yeah.
So as soon as it dipped it enough to dump half the water out, we were both smart enough. We were both telling each other, turn it back up, you know, to try to keep from more water getting in the canoe and keep what water we had lost out of the canoe. And we both flipped it up at the same time, and that left it at a weight to where we could move the canoe up, pick it up, and we could maneuver it at that point. And then, you know, we decided that it would be best if we got the canoe perpendicular across the log jam so it was completely out of the water. That way we could work with it. And once we did that, you know, we got to the point where we could get it up there, got the motor out of the water, and we just got in there and basically hand scooped all the water that was left in the canoe out.
Got the water out, then we got it back horizontal, and luckily we had both paddles, head down river.
It's been black dark for 30 minutes.
No moon.
We've been doing this in the dark for 30 minutes.
No moon. It's November the 11th.
Yeah.
With no moon.
Yeah. And the whole time, I was being completely demolished by fire ants.
Oh, yeah.
Fire ants were all over those logs.
So, Joe, we're going down the river, pitch black. He's like, hey, let's just go and we'll park this on the bank and we'll come back and get it. And I'm like, no, let's just go through the woods. So we'll go through, it'll be quicker, we won't have to walk on the bank.
I wouldn't want to hear none of that.
No.
I was wanting to go straight to dry land on the highest hill I could find and put the canoe on the bank and walk back to the house and deal with the rest of it later. That was my first thought process. JP had his mind made up. He could maneuver us through the woods, through the water, at dark, with paddles, all the way back to the house, and he wasn't going to have it any other way. We was going to take it all to the crib. And I wasn't trying to take it to the crib. I was trying to take me to the crib. I wanted to get on dry land.
He was worried about spiders.
I hate spiders. God, I
So he knew, and I knew we're gonna hit some stuff we couldn't see. It's gonna be low-lying limbs in the middle of the woods, pitch black. That's gonna just kind of hit you across the face.
to put it in perspective, basically something that you would be walking through the woods is flooded. Yeah. So we're canoeing with paddles up against the current, blind through hardwoods. That's the best way I can put it. You can't see anything in front of you.
Flooded timber, pitch black.
Can't see nothing. And finally, I had to,
go with it.
I had to go to the mode.
A special place.
I had to go to a special
place.
The
Navy SEALs.
Yeah, frogman status. I had to go to frogman status and just bite the bullet up on the front of the canoe and say, all right, we're going through the woods. We're going all the way to the house. We're paddling the entire way against the rushing current, and we're not going to be able to see. And there's a chance we're going to flip this son of a bitch again.
Yeah, he said that. We did not. I did lose my favorite hat on the way in.
Yeah.
Made it all the way here, safe and sound.
Yeah.
Thank God.
But I will tell you this. If there was any other person that this would have happened with, I don't know that it would have came out the same way. I don't know if there is two people that could have been as cool in the position.
Well, thank you.
As it went down. And I was very useless at the very beginning of it. And if I had just listened to him and put my life jacket on at the very start, I could have been very helpful. But, here we are.
Lost my mag light and my 308 was a model 788.
Mm-hmm.
My dad won when I was like
1984.
Yeah.
1984.
1 to 3 years old anyway. He shot a wolf and won this gun, and I lost it. And I've probably killed 90% of the deer I've ever killed in my life with this gun. So that was the hardest part about the whole trip, losing that gun.
And I could see it in him even before we were out of the dark. Once he realized that we were both okay, even before we got the boat right, before we knew how we were going to get back, he was tore up about the gun situation. I
couldn't believe that Matt's gun was still in the boat.
I couldn't either, and I was tore up about Matt's gun. I was pretty upset about that because sorry, Matt dog, I cannot afford to buy you a new one, but I appreciate you letting me borrow it.
300 blackout.
Yeah, AR style. It's $1,800 gun, but whatever. And I was tore up about his gun too, and I could tell he was, but I was even happier that,
would come out okay.
Yeah, and we're here to drink teas and talk to you about that shit.
That's it.